Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Kevin DeMenna with DeMenna Public Affairs, here on behalf of our client, the Arizona Dude Ranch Preservation Project. I need to say thank you to Mr. Dunn and to the members. It's a busy time of year, and appreciate the sponsorship of this. We've worked through many of the details, but this has been a pleasure to be able to visit some of these historic ranches and discuss their problems and try to identify a path forward so we can keep these. As Mr. Dunn said, they are on the edge of urban sprawl. I'd like to just touch briefly on what it does. You have people here from this ranching community. This is, I'm told, high season. It's February in Arizona. So I'd love you to hear from at least one of them. In the 40s, there were approximately 80 of these. We now measure roughly 14. There is a standard which is in place in the bill. I'll come to that in a second. But when it comes to Arizona history, the stories abound, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but we all know someone or may know a relative that came here for their health, 50, 60 years ago. Arizona was the dude ranching capital of the world. It still can be. The reality of this bill is very straightforward, and I want to just tell you precisely what it does and what the amendment does. There are two things. It defines a dude ranch. It's important to understand that this is a pretty well-established definition. If you've never stayed at one or checked the internet, explored to see if you might want to, there are really four basic criteria. Simple, it's got to be a ranch or rancho. That's a part of the culture. But more importantly, these ranches must offer programs in horseback riding, hiking, biking, and the working cattle ranch experience. Most importantly and most binding is that the bill requires that a horse herd be maintained equivalent to the number of units. So if you have 15 units in your ranch, you must maintain a horse herd and an active program of at least 15 head. For anyone that's been around horses, raised them, this is no small undertaking. Many of these ranches, it's probably a contest between three of them for the largest horse herds in the state. I know the White Stallion is here, and they have a horse herd that at this moment is nearly 200, well in excess of 150. I'll let them tell you exactly how many. So the bill does two things. It allows a guest ranch to make application if it produces a deed restriction to the county assessor's office. This deed restriction says that this will remain a dude ranch for 10 years. More importantly, if it stops being a dude ranch, the assessor must be notified, and all of the back taxes that would have been paid at the higher ratio would then be due. So imagine a closing statement for a deal on one of these ranches. There would be a big line at the end for the back due property taxes. It's our view that these ranches on the edge of urban sprawl need this kind of support, and frankly, it's a prioritization among policymakers that these ranches matter and we want to protect them and preserve them. So with the definition, with the deed restriction, we think this is a good program. It's good for the state. It's certainly going to be good for international tourism. I'd like to close by showing you one of the ranches, this photo was taken a few days ago, has flagpoles in front. And it's their tradition to raise the flags of the country, the origin, for their guests. So last week at this one, we had to have these checked. We didn't know these by heart, of course. Denmark, Germany, Britain, Netherlands, Sweden, Norway. We're taking the preservation project beyond just trying to stabilize their tax environment, meeting with the Office of Tourism, trying to let other Arizonans know what apparently the international community knows, and that this can be the dude ranch destination that we want it to be. We hope you'll support the bill and the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeMenna. Any questions for Mr. DeMenna? Representative Powers Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. DeMenna. So in the northern part of my district, I have many resorts, and I have some that used to be dude ranches at some point in the past. And what is to stop the resorts from trying to be a dude ranch again?
So
they have horses, they have biking paths, and
so, Mr. Chairman and Representative Powers Hanley, I'm not sure that the answer is the one you're looking for. The reality is if they have 100 units and they want to bring in a horse herd of 100, these historic ranches may be able to revitalize and go in that direction. I'm not sure that's a bad thing, to have more dude ranches in the state. What is a bad thing is if the Sheraton downtown does that. We don't think the bill permits that. In fact, I'm fairly certain it does not. If there are ranches that are, frankly, on the edge, we would hope this is an inducement to bring them back. Now, dude ranching in Arizona, there's a book, and the man that wrote the book on dude ranching in Arizona is here today. He may be able to answer these questions more precisely.
Representative Farrison.
To that point, these are not out of business. These are doing very well, and they have horses already. I'm just saying that they are resorts that used to be a smaller level operation that was called the Dude Ranch, and now they're resorts. And they are on the edge, but they're doing very well, I guess. And so I'm concerned about, a corporation like that trying to take this exemption.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Powers Hanley, we'd be concerned about that as well. Again, if you haven't stayed at a guest ranch and if you haven't had this experience, we think the definition and the deed restrictions are tight enough. We have folks from the business that I think may be able to explain. And if they're on the map, they may be a member of our group. If they're not, then I'm not really sure how to address their situation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Madam
members.
Vice Chair.
Would Russell True please come to the podium?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Dunn.
Mr. Chairman, Kevin, so when we first started this process, these were some of my concerns. We in our first initial conversations, how are we going to protect, making sure we don't have a BRBO or VRBO having two horses up in Scottsdale and doing something and doing that, and making sure that we don't have just someone gaming the system, because we don't want to use this ag classification as a gaming of the system. Can you respond to that?
So fundamentally, and I appreciate hearing from the assessors, we've met with them multiple times, incorporated their operational changes. That is the amendment. It is to meet with their concerns. As policy is set, I would look to this committee and to the legislature to determine what does and doesn't belong in the agricultural classification, to prioritize what does need attention and deference at the state level, and I'd look to assessors to administer that. With respect, I think we may now understand why La Paz County no longer has any dude ranches. We're down to 14. Maricopa, and I think it might be useful just to refer to their letter, which you now have. Assessors, by supporting this, can preserve Arizona's rich cultural heritage and the Old West's trailblazing character. That's not a weak endorsement from the Maricopa County Assessor's Office. Wickenburg, at least this side of Wickenburg, is in Maricopa County. There are dude ranches. It's been the dude ranch headquarters of the world. The real issue is, do we want to try to preserve them with this modest adjustment? I would submit that's a legislative decision, not a county decision.
Thank you. Representative Dunn.
Yeah, not to beat this up too much, but I think it's the working. If we need to tighten up the definition, but I think it's the working definition of dude ranch, in which you're doing the actual the cattle and
Yes.
you said the working definition, because I think if you have a trailer park and you have 4 horses, it doesn't tie into a dude ranch. But I think if we need to move that around and tighten up the definition, I'm willing to do a floor amendment. But I think it's back to the presumption of what you're actually doing.
And Mr. Chairman, Mr. Dunn, to close this out, I'm sure this was meant respectfully and without any intention to insult, but the notion that a trailer park could have a herd of horses, offer the American Family Meal Plan, and somehow conform to these statutory requirements, that's a bit of an affront. For those that have owned horses, having one is something. Having 10, having more than 10, hundreds, these are professionals. These are long-time operations. So I wouldn't want to diminish what they do as something that we could start up in the corner of a trailer park next Saturday. We can even tighten this further and continue to work. But the question of, does this rise to the top? Does it deserve the priority attention? And we think the answer is yes. We're happy to tighten this definition further. We don't want to be too exclusive, but we're happy to do that.
Okay. Thank you, sir. All right. Appreciate it. Remember, seeing no further